This is Philly, a hard-nosed, blue-collar type of city. We run the football. I'm dead serious. This is a hard hat, lunch pail, work truck. This ain't no Hollywood thing. This is the real deal, real blue-collar fan base. This coaching staff better get it together and figure it out. You do one thing very well, and that's push dudes off the line of scrimmage and run the football. If the comment section of my videos had an attitude or a theme to them, whether it's on my YouTube comments or like my Twitter comments or Instagram or TikTok or wherever, oh boy, that would definitely be the theme in which I'm hearing. And I feel people. I can't say that I haven't felt the same way about this football team at times myself while watching the games. I've often looked at my wife, my niece, anyone else who's watching a game with me and been like, man, what is it with this team not running the ball in certain down in situations? But I went in to go take a look at exactly why this was occurring, try to get a feel for what is the coaching staff doing here. And I don't agree with everything that I'm going to tell you today, but I got some things to talk about. All right, y'all, let's get it. What's up, Cerebral Football fans? My name is Steven Hyder. This is Gate City Sports Channel. The physical raw data. Let's start there with this discussion. In the first 3 games of the season with Cam Jurgens, which is point number 1, the subtraction of Cam Jurgens, the Eagles had run 223 total offensive plays. 107 of those were passing plays compared to the remainder of those being run plays. I think it was like 117 or something like that, guys. So, at the end of the day, when Cam Jurgens was in the game, the Eagles were a little more balanced. They were 48% of their plays being passing, 52% of their plays being runs. Post Cam Jurgens, 19 plays. And of those 219 plays, we have about 130 that are passing plays and 89 that are running plays. When you work that figure out, now you got a 59% pass to 41% run ratio. So we see a really big, like almost 10 percentage point swing basically occurring post Cam Jurgens inside the offense. I know that's going to lead to the next obvious question, which is, well, Gabe, why did that swing happen? Like, why did we go from running the ball so much with Cam Jurgens in the first 3 weeks to when Cam Jurgens got injured? We went down so much, like we just basically, like the run's kind of disappearing from the offense. And truth be told, it's kind of complex. I'm not going to lie to you. There's some complexity to this evaluation that I don't think is really being discussed because it's more than just a single factor that's leading to this happening. I think the first thing to discuss here is the fact that the offense just hasn't been as consistent as it was. Now, I will say I think the explosive element has remained. We still pop off these 12-plus yard runs. I mean, I can show you the data. The first 3 weeks, we had 9 of them. Weeks 4 through 6, we've had 6 of them. When you factor in the fact that we're running the ball less, you can still see that even though we've had less number, when you look at percentages, it's going to be pretty dang similar in terms of how often we break one. I think the issue is when you look at things such as how many times the plays are getting stalled behind the line of scrimmage, pre and post what happened with Cam Jurgens' injury. Because beforehand, we were tied with Washington for the second fewest times that we got stopped behind the line of scrimmage, 5. And mind you, we ran the ball a lot during that period of time. But in weeks 4 through 6, we see more than a double in the intake of the amount of times that we've been stopped behind the line of scrimmage with 11 plays, which if you're having trouble getting positive yards in the run game, even if you still have an explosive element to it, that's an issue. That's going to be an issue because it's going to throw off the timing, the rhythm, and the chemistry within that offense. A lot of these fluff words I've heard people say without context, that stuff does get taken over. But that's only a singular point. It's a little bit more than just this. Some of this has to do with game planning. And I'm not trying to throw shade at the coaching staff. I think generally speaking, our coaching staffs do a very good job opening up game planning, coming out of the third quarter when they're making those kind of in-game adjustments on the fly. I think they've done a pretty dang good job overall on the duration of the season. But you can't just blame all this on the fact that, like, okay, there's some rhythm and consistency issues. Some of it's game planning, too. Simple point, matter of facts here, right? Week 4 against Washington, they wanted to attack Forbes, and it was a smart decision because A.J. burned him up. And then, week 6 against the Jets, they wanted to attack a pretty much diminished secondary themselves and go after that. So some of this is scheme, game planning dependent. It's not just the fact that we've stumbled out the door, with a rhythm of the offense. Like, there's some other elements to this going on as well. The other side to this, the third part, if the first part is just consistency and rhythm, the second part is, game planning for your opponents. The third part's got to be game situation, circumstance, right? And I think some of this has to be discussed because in weeks 1 through 3, there's a common denominator here. We built double-digit leads on all 3 opponents, New England, Minnesota, and Tampa Bay, which then led us to try to take the air out of the football and basically run clock to end the game. Not every game was successful in that. I mean, we let New England, we let Minnesota back in the game, but we did have 2-score leads in both of those games, and we just failed to really close it adequately. But we saw the 9-minute drive to close out that Tampa Bay game, which put up a ton of rushing yards there. Weeks 4 through 6, rhythmically, it was a little differently. That's when we started having a lot of issues with the secondary. That's when we started having dudes come out, and you could see the balance was off offensively and defensively. There were times that both units were kind of carrying each other, but we just didn't seem to have that game where all 3 units, including special teams, clicked together, per se, weeks 4 through 6. You can make an argument for the most part in the Rams game. In week 5, we were kind of there, but nonetheless, you could see there were some troubles, especially week 4 and week 6 with our secondaries, and the fact that we couldn't get ourselves in a game situation to close like that, to close it out with a run game. I do think that's a factor here. And there's the part about what happened last week with the Jets, man. I know that the Eagles wanted to attack that secondary. I know that secondary was beat up. I get it from a schematic standpoint, but your route development still has to match your protection. We got on San Francisco last year about talking about how they were going to beat us if Brock Purdy stayed in the game. It's like, bro, your man got hurt because the protection didn't match the route scheme. We got served a little bit of that humble pie last weekend, to be real. We didn't chip, and I thought that we should have chipped to the right side every single play we were throwing the ball. Tight end, a running back, a slot receiver. I don't think we could afford to stay in because they were dropping 7 into coverage, and they're really only rushing 4 most of the game. But you could still chip and make sure you can shore up that protection. I don't think we did this. I do think there's some element to say, man, last week, Steve, has a little bit of a flawed approach to the game. When Lane Johnson went down, maybe we should have been quicker to kind of realize something. It gets into the last point, guys, which is we have to discuss what our production's been like and how we get this thing back right. Our production's been sketchy, let's be real, post-Cam Jurgens. That's part of the problem. We've got to call it out, man. I mean, yards per game is down almost a full yard. 3.9 from weeks 4 through 6 to before in weeks 1 through 3, we were averaging 4.8 yards per carry. We're getting tackled behind the line of scrimmage a little too much in the absence of Jurgens, to be quite honest. And I do think that's part of the reason why the coaching staff is making some, I think, flawed decisions at times, to be honest. I like Brian Johnson, and I think Brian Johnson will be very good for this offense as the play caller. But with that said, there is some factual context to say that we're paying startup costs. We have a young play caller, and we are paying a little bit of the startup costs. I personally think that the startup cost that we pay will be worth it in the end, but I get why some people are like, man, I really hope this picks up very soon. Case in point, I don't know who's responsible. I mean, Nick should really be the person who's responsible for these big game-time decisions like this. It really should be filtered through him, and I'm pretty sure it is. But on that 3rd down, where we're under 2 minutes to go, the Jets only have 2 timeouts left. If you run the ball there with 1 minute and 31 seconds on the clock at the snap, it would have been, you're forcing the Jets to have to use one of their timeouts there. So now they're down to just 1 timeout, and they got to drive the ball, God knows how far, right? I mean, it depends on the punt, but theoretically probably going to be over 80 yards if you can put the ball at the right spot. Situationally, I think there are times to where we are still making some mistakes that need to be improved. And I do think we're forcing things because we're not effective with the run game inside the red zone right yet, because I think we removed Jalen Hurts a little too much. I generally agree with trying to keep the contact off the quarterback, but you notice how much our RPO plays are down this year. We're kind of favoring a little bit more of the play action over RPO stuff this season, to be honest. And I do think we get in the red zone that maybe we should be upticking that a little bit because it just makes us hard to defend. And I think without that, our offense is a little easier to put away, to be honest. All right, guys, I appreciate y'all's time and attention. These are just my thoughts of what I saw from the tape and the analytics behind the play. Hey, big game Sunday night against Miami. This is the get-right game. Kelly Green's at the Link Sunday night. A good common opponent here. Let's get it right, but this is the get-right game.